Buddham sharanam gacchami.
Buddham sharanam gacchami.
Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami.
Dhammam sharanam gacchami.
Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami.
Sangham sharanam gacchami.
Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami.
Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami.
La dalam jubenji chamye be mola doje phoma kunne doje ma Dharma yimla chase lo om dare du re so 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 gewandi nyudo da phama doma du jone do wa chi jamale tie salang bara sho Tashidilek, everyone. As I repeatedly mentioned, that whatever activity we do it for getting some happiness and peace. So therefore, when we do Dharma practice also, it should be aimed towards getting peace and happiness, and especially long-term happiness and long-term peace, not fleeting peace and fleeting happiness. And especially Dharma practice should not be done in order to get fleeting pleasures. I mentioned this earlier few times that we primarily remain very busy and run around in search of pleasure, thinking that that is peace, that is happiness. And therefore, we don't get the real long-lasting peace and happiness. And the one that stops you from attaining that long-lasting peace and happiness is none other than the afflictive emotions. And it is because of the strong presence of afflictive emotions, despite our wanting to do something good, we repeatedly slip into our old die-hard habit because we feel comfortable living in that old ways of thinking, old ways of living, because we are familiar with that. And in fact, a question has been asked by somebody saying that if we all want happiness, do not want suffering, then why we keep on doing those things which bring suffering, not happiness and peace? And it is answered by saying that we do not know anything better than doing that. So therefore, the purpose of studying Dharma is to know the better ways of getting more reliable peace and happiness. And it is important to note that the most important obstructive factor is negative emotions. So our enemy number one is these negative emotions. So for a Dharma practitioner, the only, perhaps the main job and the responsibility is to fight with these negative emotions in whatever way these negative emotions are coming. These negative emotions are very cunning, very opportunistic. They come in different forms, different manners, and they will come as if they are supporting you, helping you, and we get confused and follow the dictates of the negative emotions. And therefore, despite our wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, we keep on experiencing suffering and do not get enough happiness and peace. The reason is because we are not able to do the right thing. We are not able to do the right practice. Now, how should we inspire ourselves to do the right practice? Now, here you need to develop certain determinations and aspirations, develop certain convictions, deep down convictions, without which it will be difficult. So therefore, let me quote here a statement by the great Kadampa master Potowa, who said that if you think about impermanence repeatedly, if you think about impermanence many times, and then gradually, if you're able to develop that kind of conviction and conclusion regarding the definiteness of death, if that kind of understanding stays in your mind, the definiteness of the death and the indefiniteness of when it is going to come, if you have a very strong hold of that understanding, then there will be no difficulty in removing the negative emotions or negative deeds, and there will be no difficulty in engaging in virtuous practice. I'm sure you will recall, I mentioned this right in the beginning, that the first teaching that the Buddha gave us on impermanence, including death, because that is the one that will inspire you to engage into practice. That is the one that will provoke you into practice. Normally, we remain lazy and distracted because we have no idea when we are going to die. We even don't have that idea that one, a deep conviction that it is definite that I'm going to die. That's the problem. Once you develop this conviction that I'm going to die and it's not sure when I'm going to die, then that will spur you, activate you, and make you think, okay, if that is the case, then on that visiting of the dead at the indefinite time, what is it that is going to help me? That will reduce my fear. that will reduce my anxiety. What is it? We need to ask this pertinent question. Then the answer you will get, I mean, it is more or less kind of similar answer to everybody. That the answer we are going to get is that the only thing that is going to help us at that time is if we have Dharma practice. Meaning that if you have a mind which is habituated with the positive ways of thinking, the positive qualities, if you have as your friend, as your teacher, as your relative, as your supporter, if you have these internal positive emotions, then it can protect you. And it is with this realization you will engage into Dharma practice. And then secondly, he said that in addition to this understanding of the definiteness of death or impermanence, on top of that, if you think about, or if you meditate on loving kindness and compassion, and through repeated practice, if you're able to develop again this conviction and the importance about loving kindness and compassion towards all sentient beings, then there will be no difficulty in your job of helping others. Normally, when it comes to helping others, we get very tired. We are very reluctant, right? Clearly showing that we don't have that needed loving kindness and compassion. But if you deep down, if you have that genuine loving kindness and compassion based on wisdom, then there will be no difficulty in helping other sentient beings, just like a mother helping her child. The mother doesn't have that genuine loving kindness and compassion, but even with that kind of polluted loving kindness, which is slightly better than the kind of love that we have in ordinary affairs, the mother's love is relatively pure towards her children. So with that kind of love, the mother is ready to do everything for her child. How much a mother works for the well-being of her child is plain, is clear to every one of us. So we need to think about that. So that will come when you have that genuine sense of responsibility, loving kindness and compassion towards others. Then on top of that, what you need to do is to repeatedly meditate on shunyata, or emptiness, or selflessness of the person and the selflessness of the phenomena. And through that way, if you're able to cultivate that understanding of shunyata in your mind, then there will be no difficulty in removing the mistakes that we commit repeatedly and regularly. Those mistakes will not be there, because all those errors and mistakes come because of ignorance. And with the development of wisdom, understanding emptiness, you have removed that ignorance, that misconception of reality, right? So therefore, he's talking about these three kind of, almost like three principal aspects of the path, right? So these teachings are very powerful. So how should one instigate oneself, spur oneself into action, is very clearly mentioned in these texts. Now, whether we can receive that inspiration and engage into the practice is very much dependent upon how committed we are, how much practice we do, how much thought we give towards these practices, right? So it is because of this. Now today, like in this text also, we are studying about all those important topics of impermanence. We already studied loving kindness and compassion. We have studied a little bit. And then we discussed about the view, which is the boldly correct view. We studied about that, which was primarily talking about cause-effect relationship. Then we studied also a stanza about mindfulness on the four topics, which is basically the beyond boldly correct view. And now today, in this verse, we are especially talking about mindfulness on phenomena. Mindfulness, maintaining mindfulness on phenomena, which means seeing the ultimate reality of all phenomena, including yourself. What is their ultimate status? What is their ultimate nature? The ultimate nature is not only impermanence and so forth, the ultimate, the most subtle nature is that none of these external and internal phenomena have inherent existence. So this is what is read in the found in the next text, which says it was declared that form is not the self. The self does not possess form. The self is not seated in form, and form is not seated in the self. Understand the remaining four aggregates as similarly empty. So that means whether it's a form or feeling or perception or action or uh, and consciousness, all of this do not have inherent or independent existence. So that is what this text is talking about. So here in this particular case, for example, he's talking about the relation between the self and the physical form, the physical aggregate, physical form. Now, normally, we tend to identify the self more or less in our body. Because if your body is well, you say, I'm well. If your body is looking fine, you say, I'm looking fine, and things like that. So because of that, you tend to think that the physical form is the self. So therefore, he's repeating this by saying that the form is not the self. The very reason is we say, this is my body, this is my head, this is my hand. When I say my, that means the body is something possessed, owned by someone else, which is the self. Self is the possessor, and the body is the one that is possessed by that self. So because of this connection, we cannot say that the form itself is the self. There's one way, ordinarily, even in the conventional sense, that is the way of explaining. Now, if you explain it in the context of seeing the physical form and the self as having inherent existence, then of course, the physical form is not the self, cannot be the self, because if the form has independent existence and the self has independent existence, then there should not be any relation between the two. Anything having independent existence means not dependent on anything, independent, right? Right? So independent is not dependent on causes and conditions, not dependent on designations, not dependent on parts. So therefore, we cannot talk about the self, the I possessing the form, or form being possessed by the self. So even from that point of view, form is not the self. And the self does not possess form. Self does not possess form. That means we do think that I possess my body, right? So ordinarily speaking, we can say this body belongs to me. Conventionally, it's okay. But from the point of view of inherent existence, the self again does not possess form. It cannot possess form because, as I mentioned earlier, they cannot have any connection if they have inherent independent existence. Now, even from the conventional point of view, when if you try to interpret this, even from the conventional point of view, we can say the self does not possess form, meaning that when we say the self possesses form, it is really not like a person possessing a cow. I own a cow, I own a house. That means then you and the house is something separate that you can see. But now in this case, when you say I own this body, you cannot make that kind of separation, because that very I is designated on your psychophysical aggregate, right? So that's the meaning. The self does not possess form. The self is not seated in form. And also do not think that when you talk about the self is in the form or seated in the form, do not think like you're being in the house. So house is outside of you and you are there as the owner of the house, right? So in that sense, you can say that I'm in the house. So in this case of connection between the self, both from, of course, from independent existence, they cannot have any connection, as I already mentioned. Even from the conventional point of view, we cannot think of the self being in the form, just like an ordinary person being in his house or in his car and things like that. So there's the meaning. We cannot find like that. Self is not seated in form, and form is not seated in the self. So vice versa. The form is not seated. There cannot be a kind of a self separate where the form is situated, because the self is just designated on the physical form. So understand the remaining four aggregates, so you can apply the same reasoning with the rest of the aggregates. Now here, the most important thing, the most important point is to have some idea about the shunyata or lack of shunyata or emptiness. Okay. The word shunyata, I mentioned this earlier also, this concept of shunya or emptiness, the philosophical concept of emptiness and the mathematical concept of zero, both of these have very close connection. The mathematical concept of zero actually came from Mesopotamia, in those places, and then gradually it became more popular in India. And the philosophical concept of shunyata, I think, as far as I understand, is probably originated in India itself. So India played a great role in both of this very, very important concept, right? There's a huge story about the usefulness of zero or nothing or emptiness. You see, because if there is no limit, how are you going to count it? Or from where are you going to count it? From where are you going to start it? Where are you going to end it? So there should be a starting and ending point. So because of this concept of zero came into being. But there's a lot of story, and probably you can read it later on. So anyway, the task at the hand is this conception of shunyata. Why we should understand this concept and why this is important. To make a long story short, many people, because of misunderstanding of this conception of shunyata, they say, oh, you can do whatever you like, kill people or steal things, whatever you like, because everything is shunyata. It's not going to make any difference. That is just completely the opposite meaning of shunyata. In fact, doing good is important. Not doing bad is important because of shunyata. And because of shunyata, it is possible to do all kinds of things. It gives you that flexibility, that opportunity. It's just like earlier I compared this to space. Because there is a space, we can fly, we can stretch our hands and legs, If there's no space, for example, in your inside, if you have no space, you can't breathe, you're a dead person. So a very important element, space. So similarly, it is with this ultimate reality of shunyata, the nature of emptiness of everything, that things are able to operate, we are able to explain things. And things have this interconnected reality and things like that. So therefore, emptiness and dependent existence, these are two sides of the same coin. Because so emptiness is not equal to, I'm sure many of you know, but I want to explain this repeatedly. This is so important. So the most important thing we need to understand is emptiness is not equal to nothingness. Okay, so don't, when you talk about emptiness, don't think it is nothingness. Whatever word, people try to use the word emptiness, the voidness, nothingness, I'm not so much against the use of any of this word, but the concept, the idea behind, we must correctly understand. So the idea is that emptiness is not equal to non-existence, Emptiness is existence. Emptiness is full, not empty. So therefore, when we say emptiness, it's basically saying, it's talking about the way things exist, the ultimate nature of things. So now here the important point is, let me explain this clearly. Things exist. You exist, you're listening to me. I exist, I'm talking. Okay, then the chair on which you're sitting, it exists, and things, so things exist. There's no problem with that. Now, when things exist, there are only two ways of existence, their existence. One is the existence should be dependent. Another is the existence should be independent. Independent existence and dependent existence are mutually exclusive. There cannot be a third possibility. We cannot think about anything which is neither dependent nor independent. They are mutually exclusive. There's no third possibility. So if anything is existing, it has to be one of these two, either dependent existence or independent existence. So now we need to think about each and every phenomena, whether it is a dependent existence or independent existence. So that is something that you should do as a homework. But for the time being, what we need to know is, generally speaking, I've asked this question to many people, not only this is explained in the text, but I've asked this question to many people also. Then normally people say, yes, things exist dependently because they are dependent on causes and conditions. For example, your survival is dependent on the food you eat. It is dependent on the people who support you. So many things are dependent. There's hardly anything that you can achieve by yourself. The clothes you wear must have come from America or Canada or from China or from India, whatever, it has come from a factory made, from a different country, from a far off place. And then the food that you get on the table. All these are product of works of hundreds and thousands of people. Right? Right? So therefore things have dependent existence. Now anything that has a dependent existence cannot have independent existence. As I said earlier, they are mutually exclusive. So therefore when we say emptiness, emptiness means empty of independent existence. Because things exist dependently, therefore they cannot have independent existence. So emptiness means non-existence of independent existence, empty of independent existence, right? So therefore I said emptiness and dependent existence are two sides of the same coin. This side is dependent existence, therefore empty of independent existence. This side emptiness, therefore this side dependent existence. These are two sides of the same coin. So roughly speaking, this is how you should understand Shunyata. Now, what is the purpose of understanding that? And many people say it's very complicated. It's not terribly complicated. The genuine realization may be very, very difficult, but to get rough idea is not so difficult, at least for me. I want to say this also because as soon as we hear emptiness, everybody says, oh, it's so difficult. Students also say it's so difficult. Then teachers also say, oh, it is a little bit difficult, But as far as my understanding is not deep because of that, maybe. But what I'm saying is rough understanding is not difficult. The difficulty arises when you really try to catch hold of that, mere absence of independent existence. So shunyata means empty of independent existence, as said, which strictly speaking, it means the mere absence of independent, the mere absence that we need to understand, the mere absence of independent existence. And then particularly that understanding, through meditation, through familiarization, making part of your life, making part of your attitude and outlook, influencing every walk of your life. That, of course, is very difficult. That's very difficult. Now, what I was saying was why this concept is important. This concept is important because all the mistakes that we make, all the distractions that we have in our life, all the unnecessary running that we do, all the unnecessary sufferings that we experience are because of seeing things as having independent existence and chasing that object, thinking that this object which I fancy, which I like, has independent existence. And if I get this object, I'm going to get more reliable, long-lasting happiness and peace. Right? So there is, for example, take the case of buying a new car or or a marriage. So to our distorted view of seeing things, anything out of attachment, when we see anything out of attachment, we tend to see it. Then already because of your emotion, it's already colored. You're looking through a colored glass. And because of this colored glass, the snow may be white. Snow mountain is a white snow mountain. But if you use, yellow colored eyeglass, you will see the snow yellow. It's not because the snow is yellow, but because of your eyeglass. So we can be easily duped, and our perception can be easily distorted because of our strong emotions. The same object, it's so interesting to see that same object at one point you thought is fantastic. Sometimes even after 1 hour, when you look carefully against that same object, it's not as beautiful as you thought earlier. So we get kind of completely confused with our overwhelming upsurge of emotions. Right? So therefore, when you see things as having independent existence, then you just run after it. This is so beautiful, I need to have it. This car is so fantastic, I need to have it. If I'm able to just own this car and move in this car, then it's like heaven. That's how we tend to think. The other day I was reading, something, then somebody interestingly said that there's not much difference, crying. If you cry while riding on a bicycle or cry in a Mercedes car, sadness is there, crying is there, but probably while you are crying, you feel a little bit more comfortable in a Mercedes car, right? But basically same. The same sadness is there, same crying is there, not much difference. Not much difference. So therefore, when your mental attitude and outlook is wrong, distorted, you cannot enjoy life. That is 100% sure. So seeing things as having independent existence is misconception of reality. And I hope you will recall that I mentioned earlier also that the more you develop the positive emotions, the virtuous qualities, the more you are closer to reality. The more you go after negative emotions, the more you are away from the reality. So look at all this, seeing things as having independent existence. It is away from reality. Seeing things as permanent is away from reality. Right? Seeing things as completely happy, no suffering, it's far from reality. So the closer we go. So these days, the more and more I think about law of karma, and the more and more I think about law of nature, sometimes when we say law of karma, people might get confused, but when you say law of nature, people, it's easier for people to understand. So these days, really, I feel great, very thankful to the law of nature. Whether it's made by somebody or it's the way it is, whatever it is, the law of nature is there, and nobody can trespass the law of nature. Nobody can cheat the law of nature. However powerful you think, you may be president, prime minister, whatever, whoever you are, when we become powerful and strong and wealthy, we forget reality. And we tend to get the impression I can do anything what I like, you see. No hesitation in cheating people, bullying people, things like that. But at the end of the day, law of nature will come to help you. And law of nature will come to give punishment to that person who went against the law of nature. So at least for exploited people, poor people, it's only a question of time. Law of nature will come to help us, to protect us. Right? So therefore, it is so important that we need to follow and understand the law of nature. So shunyata is another very important aspect of law of nature. Shunyata is not something made by Buddha. He did not invent it. He might have discovered it, but he did not invent it. It is there. Law of nature, the shunyata is there in the rocks, in the trees, in the everywhere. It's nothing holy, nothing sacred. It is the way things are. It is there, but because we have no, wisdom eye to see it, we don't see the reality. We don't make an attempt to see the reality, and we chase after the shadow of the reality. And then we suffer unnecessarily. So when you have this wrong understanding or misconception of the reality, seeing things as having inherent existence, then you develop strong attachment, strong hatred, and so forth. Because when you think about your enemy, you tend to see your enemy as 100% incorrigible, 100% destructive, 100% negative, outright negative. There's nothing that's good in that so-called enemy, which is not true. Because the so-called enemy also has its admirer. The so-called enemy has his friends, his relatives, his parents who see good things in that person also. And then when we fancy something, have attachment to something, then we tend to say, wow, this is so beautiful, so wonderful, so good. And you are not able to see any defect, any bad thing inside it. That's something that we experience all the time when we do shopping, In the mall, when you see something nice, something that you fancy, then your mind, there may be some beautiful things there in that object, but your mind again exaggerate it. And then you just, without paying much attention, you just quickly buy it. And it's only after reaching home when we look carefully, then you find, oh, there is a spot here. There's the fault in the stitching and so forth. So therefore, what this point is saying is understand the reality in general and especially understand the self. Because it is the self which experiences happiness, which experiences suffering. So the more you understand the self, the more you'll be able to relax yourself from the tight grasping of seeing it as having independent existence. So at the end of the day, what this text is saying is, if you search in your body, right from the top of your head down to the sole of your feet, to search for that person, Ram or Shyam or Mary or Jesus or Kelsang, whoever, where is that person called Mary or Judy or whatever? Search it from the top of your head down to the sole of your feet. You will not find anything. It's only a designation. It's only a designation. And this is not something peculiar with the self. It's with anything. Like your hand, where is when you don't examine, you say, you take it for granted, this is my hand. But where is this hand? Search right from the fingers, then palm, and then the arms. You search it. Where is this thing called hand? So it's something designated to that aggregate. Now, when you talk about this, then it becomes more and more subtle, more difficult to understand how things work through designation. And an important point that you need to understand here is non-existence and having no independent existence. What we have been speaking so far is having no independent existence. We are not talking about having no existence at all. We said things exist. The existence has a dependent existence. So things exist. So how does things exist? I mean, it's not an easy topic. That's why many thinkers, they also say things exist independently. If things don't exist independently, how can we say they exist? It has to be exist, especially, when you love somebody. If I say, oh, that person that you love so much doesn't exist independently, there's no charm then, because you need something to hold on to. Now, suddenly when you say there's no such person, you will be shocked. So this is how it works. So what the text is saying is things don't exist as you think through your ordinary mind, but that doesn't mean to say things exist. So how things exist? It's like the easiest example that I can think about right now is the rainbow. And from a distance, the rainbow looks really beautiful. But try to go and catch it, separate all the colors in it. Can you do that? I don't think so. Even the scientists, I don't think they can do that. So does that mean they don't exist? Yes, they exist. We are able to see it. And similarly, your dream, the dream you get, the dream is dream, it is there. So normally, the mirage, the dream, the rainbow, these are given as the example of having no independent inherent existence. But that doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. For example, you might get a nightmare in your dream. It is a dream, not reality, but it will sometimes the nightmare will completely jolt you and make you get up from the bed, sweating, right? So therefore, this is the tricky part, that things function. Like that's why we compare this to magician's creation, illusion. A magician, a skilled magician, creates horses and cows and people singing and dancing and beheaded, things like that, right? Something that we can see, but doesn't have inherent independent existence. Now the important point is if you're able to see that, that will help you relax your tight grasping to yourself. The ignorance that we're talking about, the ignorance which is said to be the root of samsara, that we talk so much about, basically means misconception of the reality in general, and particularly misconception about the self. And we tend to see this self as having independent, inherent existence. And especially when you develop strong negative emotion, you tend to solidify it. When somebody uses a little bit harsh, nasty word, then you flare up, saying that, how dare you say this thing to me? This me existing from its own side. But then if you a little bit cool down and think carefully, where is this I that they got so much puffed up? Where is this I? Not only that such an I is not there, but even in terms of its usefulness, when you develop such arrogance, conceit, grasping, it makes you unhealthy, unhappy. Your blood pressure rises, temperature rises. And you have no control over your mind, you have no control over your speech, and you make all the mistakes. That's what we are seeing right now in Afghanistan. The person who blasted himself with that kind of strong grasping, kills oneself and kills many other people. Right? So this kind of understanding helps in reducing and in fact eliminating the root of negative emotions. In the Western philosophy, as I mentioned earlier, they call this notion of the self as a slippery idea. Very slippery. You can't just catch hold of something, And normally the problem is, we tend to see the I as something separate, as the king, and the body as the slave, right? But then if you think carefully, do you really have control over your body? No. Control over your mind? No. Right? When the body changes, mind changes, you're also changing, you see. So there is no fixed identity. In today's world, people talk so much about identity, one's own identity. And when we talk about, one's own identity in terms of language, in terms of culture, we are primarily thinking about a static, unchanging, permanent identity culture, which is contradictory to what the Buddha taught. Yes, you have an identity, but that identity is not fixed. That identity must evolve through your effort. Become better. The I should become better. The identity should become better. The identity should change. Right? So therefore, understanding shunyata is very, very important. Even when we study the 6 perfections, the first 5 perfections are like, compared to a group of blind people. And it is the 6th perfection, the wisdom, which is compared to a person with very good eyesight. So it's with the person with good eyesight that he can guide the first 5 blind people and take it to the right destination, meaning that it is with the wisdom realizing emptiness that all your other practices, including the first 5 perfections, which includes morality, as I mentioned earlier, if there is a need to choose between the two, choose wisdom. That is what I said earlier, right? Because when you don't have that wisdom that sees the reality, unbiased wisdom that sees the reality, you may be under the illusion that you're doing certain moral practices, but it may be wrong morality, wrong discipline. That's why in many religions people have blind faith. In many religions we have fanaticism, fundamentalism, because of lack of understanding. But if you have a greater understanding, something like the nature of shunyata, which goes for everybody. There's no discrimination at all, just like the space. However much we human beings fight on the ground, the space doesn't make any discrimination. Stupid human beings are even making demarcations in the space. This is my space, you can't fly. Shows the limitation of our stupid mind. And then loving kindness doesn't make any discrimination. Loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta, they are for everybody who is suffering, everybody who wants happiness. And especially if you think really sit down and think about the helplessness of everybody. However much you think you are intelligent, you are rich, however much you are thinking you are handsome, you are beautiful, however much you think, if you look very closely towards each and every individual without exception, including the servants and the president, the prime minister, whoever they are, if you look closely, there is nobody who is not suffering in one way or the other way. And it's only because of ignorance we don't see it. And we go more and more into the quagmire of suffering. That's what is actually happening in today's world, right? But if we are able to develop a kind of global consciousness about the need to have loving kindness and compassion and so forth, especially in the minds of these leaders, the world can be really beautiful. But otherwise, with this rampant ignorance, negative emotions in the mind of everybody, especially in the minds of leaders. Today, in addition to that rampant ignorance, we have that technological and scientific means to commit a global suicide. Global suicide. It's not just you individually committing suicide, global suicide. I mean, look at this spread of wildfire everywhere this year, flood everywhere, you see. Still, we are not learning. We only see what is there in your room. We're not able to see beyond our nose. So therefore, this teachings on Shunyata is really talking about developing a global cosmic viewpoint, how things operate, how things are dependent on each other. It's a very important point. So important that you cannot really explain it exactly how it is. Therefore, even the Buddha said it is something that you cannot think, something you cannot express, meaning that you cannot think or express exactly as it is. Of course, as I said earlier, you can, of course, explain and give some indication, but the very precise meaning, not that easy. But this is so important. This is so important. And once you develop this understanding about Shunyata, then your importance as an individual, versus the rest of the universe or rest of sentient beings becomes less. You're important, of course, but this tendency to think just about oneself and forget all others, that kind of wrong attitude will disappear. So therefore, this is a very, very important. And then in the next verse, it is saying that the psychophysical aggregates that we have, they did not drop from the space, right? They did not drop from the space. Or it also like, so let me read the verse. The aggregates do not arise at random, not from time, a primordial substance, their own essence, Ishvara, nor without a cause. One should understand that they arise through ignorance, karma, and desire. Now, having discussed about this relationship between the I and the rest of the psychophysical aggregates, then the next pertinent question is, okay, if that is the state of the physical form and the I, that they have no inherent independent existence, then what are the causes? So this is explained by saying, but having no independent existence, in fact, does not mean, as I said earlier, having no independent existence is not equal to non-existence. They exist. Since they exist, therefore, they come from their respective causes and conditions. They did not just drop from the space. The aggregates do not arise at random, means something like falling from the space. Not from time, or it is not created by a permanent time, because time is also a relative conception. You can explain time in accordance with your frame, of mind. The others can explain time from their frame of mind. So time is also a human designation conception. It doesn't have inherent existence. A clear example is, for example, if you are undergoing some difficulty or suffering, then time really, looks like it is infinite, very difficult to pass time. But when you're enjoying something, when you're happy, the time goes like this. So therefore, it is said that for the Buddhas, enlightened beings, One aeon is one moment. One moment is one aeon, depending upon how you see things. So it's a human conception. So they do not arise from a permanent time. And also, they do not arise from primordial substance. Primordial substance here means, according to the philosophical view of Samkhya, they talk about the primal substance from which things arise. And at the same time, they say this primal substance is controlled by someone else and has no control of creating other things. So there is an internal contradiction there. So we cannot say that it arose from the primal model substance. Their own essence basically means, as we already explained, essence of having their own essence means their own essence having inherent independent existence. Such kind of essence is also not there, which we already explained. And also did not arose from Ishvara. So this is equal to saying like it's not created by a creator God. Ishvara here refers to, according to the Indian philosophical system, Ishvara is in Tibetan we say Laungchu, that means a powerful deity. So there are philosophical viewpoints where they say the world is created by that God or Ishvara, which according to Buddhism, we do not accept it. Right? Because then the question arises, who created Ishvara? Who created God? If you say God has no cause, no creator, and without creator, without cause, the God can come into existence. And not only that, a God which has omnipresence and omniscient can come into existence without any cause and creator, then why can't we all just come into being without having a creator, without having a cause? So there are a lot of philosophical contradictions, right? Because when we say it's created by the God, then we ask this pertinent question that whether the God has a plan, a thinking capacity. If it is created by their thinking, then their thinking itself is impermanent. Therefore, it is fruit. The creation should also be impermanent. So how can we say that the God is permanent? If the God is permanent, it means he is not going to do anything. He's unchanging. So how can a permanent creator create impermanent creatures? Now, when we say this, we are not saying that the concept of God is irrelevant or not useful. Usefulness is dependent on something else. Because, for example, if you think there is a God somewhere who is merciful, kind, it may be there, maybe not there. But if your mind thinks about that, and then you think about this God, his kindness, his benevolence, and obey that God, which may be non-existent, but think that the Father in heaven, as we say, if there's, and then you actually live the virtuous life. Of course, you will get benefited. But philosophically, there's a lot of contradiction. So for us, ordinary people, what is important is the message given by all the religious traditions, not so much about the philosophical complexities. Because even if there are divergent philosophical viewpoints, the purpose is the message of brotherhood, sisterhood, things like that. So sometimes we don't live the message, but fight over the philosophical differences, right? And differences itself is not a bad thing. And in fact, if you look carefully, oneself as one individual is full of contradictions, full of contradictions, full of change, impermanence, change, contradictions, right? And the change takes place because of many of these expression of contradictions. So contradictions are not necessarily bad. You may have a thinking in the morning, you have a plan in the morning, and then after lunch you develop some another plan and thinking which may be better than the one you had in the morning. So you follow that thinking or plan that you developed after lunch, which is better because you have compared that thinking with the one you had in the morning. So contradictions should not be seen as something bad. So similarly, a contradiction in a way talks about divergence, differences that you have with other people, that you have with yourself, right? So these are basically, you should accept that as different aspects of reality, different aspects of reality. Okay, and then not without cause. Now, if it is not created by Ishvara and did not arise random and things like that, then what do you mean? Did they come into existence without any cause? This is answered by saying no, not without a cause. That means things arise not because of these factors that we mentioned, but they arise from their individual causes and conditions, concordant causes and conditions. One should understand that they arise through. So in terms of we are not talking about all kind of causes and conditions, but the primary causes and conditions which projected us into this cycle of existence called samsara. So this ordinary existence that we have in the cycle of existence is projected primarily by ignorance, karma, and desire. These are the important causes that projected us into this. So here it says ignorance, misconception of reality. When we talk about misconception of reality, it is not just seeing things as having independent existence, but on a lesser level, our mind is full of ignorance on so many things. And then it is because of this ignorances that we divide. We divide because the more ignorance that you have, the more illiterate, the more stupid, the more ignorant you are, the more your mind will be biased and partisan. So therefore, ignorance is really the cause of all the sufferings. And it is based on that ignorance, you develop all kinds of negative emotions, anger, jealousy. And when you develop, for example, anger, you kill people, there's the karma. And also with strong attachment, you destroy other people's life, exploit others, and things like that. You engage in all those contaminated actions and karmas. And out of many of these negative emotions, one of the more pertinent negative emotion that makes us stay in the samsara is the desire, the wish to live, wish to take rebirth. That's why we fear death, because you want to live. You have that desire to live forever. And it is also this desire which makes us take rebirth in the future lives. Right? So these are the causes. There's so many causes, so many negative emotions, but these three are the main negative emotions that projects us into cycle of existence. So now, since we are projected into such an existence, what we need to do is to remove the hurdles, the obstacles. So in the next verse, it talks about the hurdles. The hurdles are misunderstanding of ascetic practices, a perverted view of one's being, and doubt. Know these as three bonds which block the gate to the city of liberation. Take the example of you're traveling on a particular road. When you travel on a particular path or a road, there will be three obstacles. One is not your unwillingness to go on that road. That will be one hurdle. Second is going to the wrong path, make a mistake. Third is having doubt. So these are three obstacles of your smooth travel towards on any particular road and path. So similarly, when we travel to the liberation, path of liberation, these three, as we explained already, are the obstacles. One, you have no desire and wish to travel to the path of liberation. And the second, you go to the wrong path. That means here, when it uses the word, the misunderstanding of the ascetic practices, means that you take wrong moral activities as the right moral conduct. Okay. So if you practice the wrong path, then it's like moving into the wrong road, wrong path. And then if you have that afflictive doubt, and then of course, because of that doubt, you will find yourself like a person sitting on a, crossroad, having no idea which direction you should move. So just because of that doubt, you will stay there, you will remain there. So these three must be removed. The misunderstanding of ascetic practice, a perverted view of one's being. Perverted view of one's being means seeing your body as having independent existence, inherent existence, as being pure and things like that. So these are the wrong view, wrong path. Okay, so therefore these three are said to be the three bonds, three bondages which block the gate to the city of liberation. Okay. Then verse 52 says, liberation depends upon the individual himself. In this endeavor, there is no need whatsoever to associate with others. Thus accept yourself. I mean, it's not saying no need whatsoever. It's basically what it is saying is nirvana or liberation is dependent upon yourself. In this journey to achieve liberation, no one can help you. So there it is, you can, the only sure path is that you should pursue, you should engage in listening, practice morality, have concentration, and make effort in the Four Noble Truths. So that means that as a ground, you should practice morality. Then concentrate on your practice based on your extensive hearing. And then make effort in the Four Noble Truths means each of the Four Noble Truths has, a total of, each has 4 different features. So there is a total of 16 attributes to the Four Noble Truths. So all this should be understood through analytical meditation, through wisdom, seeing the things as they are. So this is basically talking about the wisdom. So this one is basically talking about the need to cultivate the 3 training: morality, concentration, and wisdom. Okay, so we stop here and ask some questions.
So, Geshe, thank you so much. We'll take some questions from Natasha and we'll check in.
Yes, thank you very much, Geshe. The first question we received actually last time, but we didn't have time to ask it. The person asks, in Tibet, there is a tradition of recognizing the reincarnation of a spiritual master, teacher, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Yeah. Usually, the reincarnation is recognized in a child, right? And this child is raised and educated according to the task, which is a very tough task actually, of serving others, not himself or herself, right?
Yeah.
Are there cases when the person is recognized as the reincarnation in an advanced age, like when it is an adult person? And if there are such cases, do you know how these people accept it, how they feel about it? Because they are already like, they have their formed personality.
Now, this is a very interesting and also tricky topic, because the so-called reincarnation of somebody may not be the right reincarnation, number one. So the so-called reincarnated being, whether that so-called reincarnated being is the right reincarnation or not, is dependent on many things. Who recognize that person? What is the recollection of that so-called reincarnate of his past lives and things like that. So what I'm saying is there are some who show clear signs of the previous life. So obviously they have clear indications to say that they are the right reincarnation. One thing that I remember is, for example, Dhammaluchu Rinpoche, who passed away some years back, he's one example. There are many others also who are able to recite many pages of certain texts, even at a very young age when it is not taught to them. And then having the letters, kind of inscribed or written on the tongue, or some parts of the body. So there are some people like that. Then there are others who may not be the right reincarnation, but the caretaker of the previous Lama, they insist that the reincarnation should be, they are found somewhere. So they find some children with some good signs, then they think this is the right. I'm sorry to say that. This is my understanding, but you should see whether I'm right or wrong. And I think it was one of the Chankyas who said that he had recognized 100 reincarnates, among which the genuine reincarnates are only 2. Right? So depending upon the situation, sometimes even if somebody is not a reincarnate, but if that person is recognized as a reincarnation and given good education and develop bodhicitta, and it's a wonderful thing. So because of that, some lamas recognize others as a reincarnate. So that is still, it's okay. Maybe not the right reincarnation, but still it's okay. But then unfortunately these days, not only these days, in the past also, I mean, we should talk about these things, accept the fact, so that we can really preserve the purity of the Buddha Dharma. If you study history, the reincarnates, so-called reincarnates, are found primarily in aristocratic family, because they have the power, they have the power to influence other important lamas and then get somebody, recognized as the reincarnate of somebody, you see. So that thing is also there. So there are people who just wanted to recognize somebody as the reincarnation, then they're able to, achieve that economical success under the umbrella of that so-called reincarnation. You see. So unfortunately, we are ordinary human beings, so those things are also there. So I wanted to tell you this. So therefore, His Holiness Dalai Lama said that the real teacher is one who has really studied for many years in major monasteries, not somebody who is suddenly recognized as a reincarnation and put on a high throne, right? His Holiness had to say this because ordinarily people, they just run after name and fame. If somebody says this one is reincarnation, then everybody says, oh, Rinpoche, The person is wrapped up in nice, looking yellow brocade or silk, things like that. And then people are, it's like seeing the Bollywood and Hollywood actresses. People's senses are very easily duped by the glamours of whatever they see in a mall or in people and things like that. So unfortunately, so that should not be the case. That's why we talk about the 4 reliances. Rely on the teacher, rely on the teaching more than the teacher, fame of the teacher. Here's one thing. The main question that you asked is, yes, there are cases of people who got recognized at a very late age. But that is okay. That's okay, because whether somebody is recognized as a reincarnation or reincarnation, that is really not a big thing. The big thing is that person, if that person is a genuine reincarnation, even without the society recognizing him as the reincarnation, he will be doing the job, his own job. Right? People may not notice it. That's why we see in ordinary people, there are some who are so kind, who may have no idea about the profound Buddhist teachings, but who just by nature, so kind, so compassionate, every day helping others, selflessly and tirelessly. So I think these people are reincarnate or whatever, very special. And then there are some who are said to be reincarnation, but they just so puffed up with egoism and dividing the society and no inner quality, no external behavior, So those things are also there. So I think, for example, the recently Kalka Jisun Tamba, he's enthroned and recognized at a very late age. And few years after his, I think, enthronement, he passed away. It's a recent happening. And his soulness, of course, even when he was a child, his soulness had a special fondness of him, and so they know each other very well. But the real recognition, I think, was given only quite late. So that is okay. That is okay. All right.
Thank you very much. And the next question is, just a moment. If around are my projection, like I myself.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So if all the people I see around me are just the projection of my mind, like I myself am a projection of my mind. So how shall I understand that when I help them, I help myself, my own projection? It's kind of difficult to understand it and to combine this practice of helping or giving them and the understanding that I'm helping my own projection. How to deal with this?
The important thing that you need to understand is, I did not say that it's only your projection. They are there. The thing I said was that they do not have independent existence, but I did not say they are not there. They are there. But in addition to their existence, you also project. You exaggerate certain qualities which may not be there. You denigrate certain qualities which may be there. So that way you kind of manipulate, right? So therefore, what is important is not to run after your projection. That's what we are talking about. Your projection is that this person, if you like, you will say this is 100% beautiful or handsome. But then instead of going after this emotional upsurge, you should just calm down and think carefully and try to, as much as possible, try to see the reality of that person by asking questions about that person from other people and things like that. Then you can reduce your, the projection, the exaggeration, and there are more chances of seeing the reality. Like shunyata, you can't see the real nature of shunyata if you go with a projected mind. So this word projection, has two meanings. One is everything that we see is designated by our mind, that is for sure. But when you say projection, then in addition to the designation, you also exaggerate or denigrate. So that should not be there. Okay.
Thank you, Geshe. And the third and the last question for today, how to deal with the doubts there are things that I cannot see myself, but I hear it from the teachers, or I read it in the books. For example, recently I've read that Buddhas, they are in each atom of the universe, so that they are always around us and close to us. It's very good to think like this, but how can I prove it?
There are many things, there are three levels of existences. First is called obvious phenomena, which you can directly see, you can prove it, you can touch it, you can see it, you can feel it. That's called obvious phenomena. So in that level, don't listen to other people too much, because it is something that is obvious, something that you can directly hear, something that you can directly see. So you should use your sense evidences to find the truth, not listening to other people. Now this is important, because even in this field, we're so lazy. We don't make it a point to see things, the reality by ourselves, or hear the news by ourselves, but simply we listen to other people. This is how we run after rumors and spread rumors and things like that. So in that field, as much as possible, use your direct senses and get the direct evidence. Then there is the second level of phenomena, which is called slightly hidden phenomena, which you cannot directly see with your senses. So here you need to ask question, reason out, use your reason. Because one of the most important quality of human being is the capacity to reason, to think it out. So as much as possible, use your reason. Again, here, don't just listen to people. You should use your intelligence and reason out whether what that person said is right or wrong. Reason out, take time. Then there is a third level of phenomena. You cannot just see directly, you cannot reason out. You simply have to, trust to other people. Now, for example, the presence of countless Buddhas around, you can't see it directly. You can't probably, you may put some reason, but and through reasoning you can get some idea, but again you cannot not easy to develop a very convincing evidence, right? So there what you need to do is, now you're entering into that field which you cannot really directly see or cannot reason out, but this does not mean that it does not exist. There are many things that exist there, but you can't directly see and you can't reason out. For example, as I normally say, many of you have already heard about this, like your birthday. If people ask you when were you born, if you say 15 August 1956 or something, then people ask you, have you seen it by your eye when you were born? No. Then have you reasoned it out? No, you can't reason it out. How can you reason out when you were born? You can't use logic and reason to find it out. No. So then how did you know? My parents told me. You have to rely upon others' quotations, others' statements. Now, here, the important thing is the person who has told you this should be somebody who has no reason to cheat you. Like, for example, in the case of your parents, they have no reason to tell you lie about your birth date. And moreover, they have compassion. So similarly, in those areas of Buddha's teaching, which we can directly confirm, we should try to confirm it using our senses. Then the second level, reason it out to find the truthness of the Buddha's teaching. And the third, even though you are unable to directly get that evidence, but you can figure it out, this should also be true, because just like you have trusted your parents, similarly, the Buddha is compassionate one. There's no reason for him to deceive us, to cheat us. And moreover, in the two fields which I can use my senses and logic and reason, I found they are correct. So this also must be correct. That way you come to the conclusion. That's one way of thinking. The another way of thinking is, as is stated in the Buddha's teaching, the power of substances is unthinkable. The power of karma is unthinkable. The power of mantra is unthinkable. The power, and the power of meditative stabilization is unthinkable. So there are many, even unthinkable things that is happening in the world today. many, many unthinkable things, right? So you cannot explain everything. You cannot explain everything. For example, with your physical, facial feature, the shape of your nose, the shape of your eyes, and things like that. Why this shape of nose is like this, not like that? Why the shape of my eye is like that, not like that? That you cannot figure out unless you're omniscient. So there are several things which you cannot find out, but it doesn't mean that they don't exist. Okay.
So thank you, Geshe. Jackie, you can ask your question. Yeah.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for your teaching. My
Yeah,
question is about.
Jackie, your voice is not very clear.
Oh, is this clearer? No.
Slightly better, yeah.
Okay. About impermanence, there's a fine line between thinking about death and being really scared. So, what's the fine line when you meditate? I'm nervous about meditating on impermanence because then I'm going to act like my head's on fire and that I have to be, perfect in every minute. And I can't, like there's a fine line between being, so scared that you have to be perfect. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So
Yeah.
how do you do that without going too far and, being so scared you have no time?
Yeah. It's important. It's important. One day I'm going to die. With that kind of notion, when you develop some fear, that fear is not very useful. That kind of fear arises in every ordinary person. Nobody wants to die, so they have the fear when they get this idea, about the imminent death. So that is not the fear that the practitioners should develop. What the practitioners should develop, the fear that the practitioners should develop is that if I die, say today or tomorrow, without able to do the virtuous practices, I may be born into some negative existence. That kind of fear is the right fear, because that will help you not to engage in negative activities. So that is important. And generally speaking, yes, you should have some fear about death, right? Which means that, again, as I said, if I'm going to die without able to do all the good things, then the negative result may be, being born in a negative state of existence, things like that. That will help you engage in, your practice. It is simple. It is as simple as like you're traveling from America to Dharamsala. Okay. When you know that you have to travel from America to Dharamsala, then the most important thing that you need to check is whether your ticket is confirmed, the dates are correct, all the details of the travel you need to know. And at that time, you will not be so obsessed with what belongings you have in your room and things like that. You will more be concerned about the journey, the travel. So similarly, thinking about death is really like preparing the journey to get your flight ticket confirmed and things like that. So in that way, it is like important to remember death. It's important. And then another way of thinking is to see death as not something, frightful, but something part of the deal. Both life and death, they are one packet, So both has its own advantages and benefits. Just like day and night. If there is only day, what we enjoy is basically light, day, not so much night. Now imagine if there is only day and no night. We'll all suffer from, depression and things like that. Right? We'll get tired. And that's why, the beauty of the night is, all the troubles and problems that you experience in the day is lost in your peaceful night sleep. So next morning you get up again as a new person. So both day and night has its own advantages. So like I think we should see death and life like that. Okay.
So Gishla, thank you so much, Gishla. That was the last question for this session. Thank you so much, Gishla. Your teachings help us prepare us, your teachings help us prepare for this everyday journey and the long-term journey. Thank you so much, Gishla. And we look forward to the next session. Please to kindly lead the prayer, Gishla. Oh yeah.